Entrepreneurially Thinking is a presentation of BioSTL and CET, Center for Emerging Technologies, with Rare Gem Productions, changing the way you view new ventures, including you on the pathway to success with your business in the St. Louis marketplace and beyond. Here's your hosts, Cheryl and Christy. Now let's get thinking entrepreneurially.
Welcome to the Entrepreneurially Thinking podcast. Our goal is to energize your entrepreneurial mindset and create pathways for business success in the St. Louis marketplace and beyond. I'm Christy Maxfield with the Center for Emerging Technologies, where we're working hard to make sure that our entrepreneurs receive the training they need and the support required to advance their missions.
And I am Cheryl Watkins-Moore. I represent BioSTL in our inclusion initiative. We're trying to get all of our folks here in our region involved, especially our women and our minorities involved in this entrepreneurial ecosystem that is just booming here in St. Louis. So welcome.
So if you've listened before, you know we're doing this show because we needed to step outside our comfort zone and meet you all where you are. And we're asking you to step outside your comfort zone.
And we are certainly stepping out of our comfort zone.
We're getting better and better. Eventually this will be comfortable. But right now we're still learning.
Yep.
And we're really glad that you're on the journey with us.
Yep.
So we just want to move all the constraints out of your way and get you thinking about how you can be engaged in St. Louis's entrepreneurship, innovation, small business, whatever you want to call it. We want you involved. So we want you to also be able to find us when you're on your favorite digital or streaming platforms. So you can find Entrepreneurially Thinking through many different streams: Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Stitcher, and iTunes. Everywhere you find the important information in your life, that's where you can find us.
So I think Christy and I are so excited with our guest today. This is one of the things that we've always talked about. How can you get involved in our ecosystem? If you're not interested in starting a business right now, but you're thinking about it, maybe you're sitting at that desk right now saying, wow, how can I get involved? Today, we're speaking to the entrepreneurs who are also wage earners, salaried employees. You know, you guys sitting at your desk right now, the folks on the grind and on the job. Think you're ready to take the big plunge, that leap of faith? Well, before you turn in your 2 weeks notice, don't do that yet.
Please don't.
And make sure you listen closely today. We have an exciting panel here with two guest speakers, I think, that are really going to give you some great background, some how to frame, how to get into our ecosystem. And Christy, how would you?
Well, one of the interesting things we've been talking about is there's more than one way to be part of the ecosystem. Yes. And we've invited two friends to join us today, Jane Cortell and Maurice Foxworth, to explain sort of how there are just so many different roles. And they've, in fact, been entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. They also have been in corporate and academic settings, and they've been mentors. I'm sure they've been a lot of other things as well. But we just keep talking about all those different ways to get involved. And our job is to make that real.
Absolutely.
So the best way to make that real is to talk to people who've been in those roles, done those different types of things, and make it look easy. So we'll spend a little time with them as soon as we come back.
Now here's Make It Happen with Keith Sales Pro.
According to Peter Handel, the CEO of Dale Carnegie Training Institute, here are 5 essential rules for great presentations. Number 1, be yourself. If you pose as somebody you're not, your audience will know you're insecure and therefore disbelieve whatever you're saying. 2, tell stories. The purpose of a presentation is not to convey information. You can do that with a data sheet. The purpose of a presentation is to show how the information has meaning for what you're doing. Number 3, practice. The very best public speakers make it seem as though the ideals are so new and original that the speaker is slightly surprised at what he or she is saying. 4, socialize. Audiences consist of individuals. Always arrive early and try to get to know some of the individuals in your audience that you're speaking to. And number 5, brevity. For every presentation that wrapped up too early, there are 1,000 that have gone on way too long. Today, remember, it can happen. It will happen. And together, we will make it happen.
Follow Keith Sales Pro on Facebook or Twitter at Keith Sales Pro, or visit his website at keithsalespro.com.
It can happen. It will happen. And together, we will make it happen.
Hi, I'm Jade Harrell, founder and executive producer of Rare Gem Productions. And entrepreneurially thinking means to me that you take time to actually think about yourself as an entrepreneur, what your opportunities are, what you want to do, and how you're going to design this life.
Welcome back. Today we're joined by Jane Cortell and Maurice Foxworth. Jane is the lead of Global Strategic Product and External Affairs at DuPont Nutrition and Health, and Maurice is the principal of Innovation Works. Thank you both for being here.
Absolutely.
And we want to just start off asking you both to share a little bit about your background. And Jane, so if you could start us off.
Mm-hmm. All right. So thanks for inviting me here today. I work currently for DuPont, as you mentioned, and I've had a very eclectic career, so to speak. I came here when I was 18, having lived abroad most of my life in different countries. So I speak about 5 different languages.
Wow. What countries were you living in?
I lived in Iran, in Spain, UK, the Netherlands, Japan, and Hong Kong. Mm-hmm. So I've been had a very interesting life growing up, but haven't been here ever since. Can you believe that? So.
That's impressive.
Yes.
So I came here to do my biology undergraduate degree at WashU, went on to do an MBA at St. Louis U, and thought I was going to be pre-med, doctor, that whole thing, and decided that that wasn't my career path. Either way, I was able to combine business and science very early on, and it has served me very well in my different positions that I've had. I worked at Mallinckrodt here in town. I've worked at Monsanto. But where I kind of got my entrepreneurial stint was I was working at Solutia. They had an intrapreneurial division at the time, and I was running a small company for them, which I had an opportunity to actually buy and spin out from that company.
Wow.
And that's where I kind of got my entrepreneurial spirit going. And it's now in my DNA. I've since then sold that company, and now I'm working at DuPont. But I'm still very much involved with different entrepreneurial activities. Since it's now part of my DNA, you can't get it out of it anymore.
And we've been really fortunate to have Jane as part of our Square One programming, our Ignite program in the spring and our boot camp in the fall, and really just tireless in terms of coming and spending time and sharing her expertise with the entrepreneurs in our ecosystem. So
and I think that's where
it's been a blessing.
Our audience needs to understand, just how we talked about in the beginning here, is that you can get involved in different aspects. And Jane, seems like that not only did you get involved with running a company and spinning one out, but now you're taking that skill, those skills that you learn, and applying them into the different programming that Christy talked about.
Yeah, not only can I use that at work, right? So it's been invaluable and definitely a skill set that I'm using at DuPont every day. There are not enough entrepreneurial-minded people inside the corporate world to really develop new products, new ideas, think outside the box. I think an entrepreneur is so good at thinking outside the box and seeing what else is possible. And if you've had your life in an entire corporate career all your time, I got to tell you, it's a little stodgy, right? So you don't see all those possibilities all the time. Entrepreneurs always see possibilities in everything.
That's because we never have any resources. We have to always
That's right, you got to do it.
We have to improvise
yourselves, right? So having that skill set now and using it at DuPont is super valuable, right? But at the same time, given that DuPont sits in the middle of the Cortex district, what a blessing for me to be able to, work in Square One, being able to go to the Venture Cafe and still be part of that ecosystem. So I don't feel like I'm back in stodgy corporate world, because people thought, if you're running your own company, how can you possibly go back to the corporate world, right? And it's okay to dance like that.
Absolutely.
People go in, they go out. It doesn't matter as long as you're having fun. And you think you're making a contribution. It doesn't really much matter where I work. So I'm just thrilled to be able to do that.
And Maurice, so how have you danced?
How have I danced?
Maurice, and let me tell you, Maurice is a good friend, and I would love for him to tell his background of how he's traversed his career path.
Right. I'm an intellectual property attorney by trade. And so I specialize in IP or intellectual property transactions primarily. But I started out as a jock. I went to school on the athletic scholarship. And while I was there, I got inspired and connected to technology, particularly simulations and artificial intelligence and things I thought I could never, ever do.
And things that are huge now.
Yeah, exactly. And at Howard University. And I was fortunate enough to get an opportunity to work for NASA. And from working with NASA and the work that I had done at Howard University in terms of looking at historically Black colleges and universities and their research infrastructure and how those institutions could build research capacity. At the same time, NASA was creating a program to help those institutions build their capacity. So I was probably one of the few people in the country that understood how to work with these institutions. So as part of my background in simulation, they wanted to develop this whole robust training around project management using simulations, similar to what they did for the astronauts. So they brought me in for that right after show how old I am, right at the first Challenger accident. I was a part of that team. And also at the same time, I had a dual purpose of working with historically Black colleges and universities and enhancing their ability to do world-class research. And so those years were great years for me. I love NASA. If you look at my car now, I have a NASA sticker on the back.
My husband would love to spend some quality time with you. I think I have more space books in my house than I do anything else.
But that foundation at NASA kind of ignited my passion for innovation and technology. And it gave me an opportunity to be exposed to a world that I never knew existed because I was focused on athletics. And actually, I coached my way through Howard University as a graduate student. So while doing that, I decided to leave, and as a lot of government employees do, and I was at NASA headquarters in Washington, D.C., and I became a contractor. Okay. So I went to a fairly large consulting firm, and I basically did the same things that I had done before, working in project management, innovation, those sorts of things. But I moved to a couple different companies, and I noticed that everywhere I would move, my clients would move with me, namely NASA. So I started to think.
They followed the talent.
Yeah, absolutely.
I said, well, they're following me and the money's following me. Maybe I should just take all the money.
No money, no mission. No money, no margin.
That's right.
So the last firm I worked with, it was a firm called Futron. I met a coworker, Cynthia Dinkins, and we started Foxworth and Dinkins. And what we did, we specialized in, now that we have capacity in a lot of minority institutions, not just historically Black colleges and universities, but also Hispanic serving institutions, tribal colleges. How could we expand that capacity into commercializing or transferring that technology and hold them to the same standards of other research-oriented institutions? And so we focus primarily on assisting federal agencies, primarily NASA, Department of Energy, Department of Defense, and other R&D focused agencies, and assisting them in building capacity in those institutions to commercialize technology. And we had quite a few successes in that. And I did that for a number of years. And when I first started, my competition were mainly MBAs, and they became attorneys.
Interesting.
So I decided to come back to St. Louis, where I grew up, and go to law school at St. Louis University, where I received my JD and passed the bar in practice. And at the same time I did that, St. Louis University set aside $5 million to create an office that focused on technology transfer. And I wrote Father Bionde, a letter explaining my background in working with institutions in technology commercialization. And they hired me as a consultant to create the office and the structure. So I did that. And after I finished, I was going to go my merry way. And they asked me to come in and to help run it and set it up for a little while.
Wow.
And I said, I'll do that for a year or two.
How many years?
A few years later, I decided to leave. And then they offered me the opportunity to be the director of the office. And I actually directed the office for a number of years before going back into private practice, because I was drawn by the entrepreneurial craving of getting back and mixing it up. But it was a great experience at SLU because it was an entrepreneurial type of opportunity within the university, but just that external calling of being out in the ocean of innovation is just something that's just, I couldn't resist.
So both of you guys, it's very interesting how your careers have meandered and
Exactly.
brought you both to SLU, and how you've impacted and worked with innovation in different aspects. Jane within a large company and then working and developing a smaller unit within a large company. And Maurice, you looking at technology from a commercialization standpoint and from an academic standpoint, transferring that technology from the university into, I call it the real world, right? So, for our audience, I think you guys are sitting in unique spots. How do you think folks who are maybe asking questions of how can I get involved? What would be some of your ideas for involved? How could people actually start to engage in our ecosystem? What are your thoughts?
Well, you got to just jump in, right? You got to let go of the edge of the pool and just do it. So for me, when I had the opportunity to spin it out, it wasn't also, I was kind of, at that time anyway, I had been in corporate all my life. And so what essentially happened was the senior management came to me and they said, look, we're looking at selling Solutia, and all these entrepreneurial companies that we have, we're going to either sell them off or shut them down.
Wow.
So I'm like, okay, well, I just, built this thing up for the last 2 years, and now my little baby's going to go, right? So I come home later that night and sat down at the dinner table with my husband. And I said, well, guess what? Looks like I'm going to be looking for a job in the next 6 months, and he's an attorney by training. And he's like, oh, we should buy that company. And I'm like, sat there like across the table from him, like, you're kidding me, right? Like as if they're ever going to sell it to us,
Was that a new tendency for him, or did you think he had that in him?
He had that in him.
Okay.
He had been an attorney, had a private practice. He was kind of a self-made man, in quotations, for, for his entire career.
So he was an entrepreneur.
So he was from the get-go, right? And I'm like, wow, I don't know. That's a little scary. That's a little daunting.
But your concern was that they wouldn't sell it to you.
Right.
Not that you couldn't do
Right.
that. Interesting.
Right.
Kind of like that mindset of like, I'm a nobody. But, that's all BS,
But you
right?
were
Of
running
course.
it.
Right. But I was running it. But I was running it in a corporate world. So
Right.
Right.
I couldn't do this outside of the corporate environment, right?
Right.
Well, long story short, this was in 2008. And so the financial environment was a little challenging. But we did. We took a little mini roadshow around the St. Louis financial institution to see if we could find people who were willing to invest with us in buying it out. And like I said, that was challenging because of the condition of
Right,
those
the economy.
years, right? The economy was in pretty bad shape. We did end up finding a number of private angel investors that went in with us, and we ended up exactly doing that. And then my husband and I ran that company for a number of years together, and not for the faint, by the way. If you really want, you got to have a strong marriage to be able to,
No kidding.
have your husband be your boss.
Oh my God,
he liked to say, if he were sitting here, he's like, yeah, I acquired my wife twice.
He's lucky he's still around to say that.
Right.
But here's my point: is you just going to have to take the plunge. If you sit there at the sidelines, nothing is going to happen. If you really want to get engaged, just get engaged. Talk to somebody who already is an entrepreneur. Come to lots of the different events that are happening in the Cortex ecosystem. Venture Cafe is an obvious one to point to.
Yep.
Right? But sitting on the sidelines, guys, it's not where the game is going to happen. You got to get on the court.
And from my standpoint, it comes down to one critical thing, and that's inspiration. You have to be inspired, because the things that you're going to go through, we can't list you every step of the way, because
Right.
there's different turns and twists that you'll come into, but you have to be inspired. I guess when you think about Edison, and he said that invention is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. But it's just like your grandmother's recipe. If you leave out that little pinch, even though it may be the minority of what's required, it's the most essential part
Right.
of
It's
the
a secret
success.
sauce. Yeah.
And that's what inspiration is. Because if you're not inspired, it's very difficult for you to go the distance in terms of the journey. And so find things that you have passion about, that you're willing to. I tell folks, I do what I do. I'll do it for lunch money. I don't want to do it for lunch money.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
But I love it.
Right.
So you have to put yourself in a situation where your inspiration is enough to carry you at least far enough down the road to kind of remain focused, so you can have those conversations and hear all the no's that you'll hear over and over, and you hear folks questioning you, particularly in the innovation space. And the entrepreneurial space in general is difficult, but when you speak of innovation and you're on the leading edge of different things and ways of thinking, no one's out there has probably heard of the things that you're talking about.
Yeah, you're on the bleeding edge.
Exactly.
Right. And you're the expert.
And they're doubting you.
Right.
Oh, that's not going to work.
Right.
This is not going to work. That's what innovation is. So it makes it that much more difficult to really continue to move forward. And that's why you have to have that inner fortitude that's supplied by inspiration.
Also, just to build on that, what you're saying is, if you have all those no's around you, come to these different events in the Cortex District, because the people here around this area, they're the ones that are saying, oh yeah, I think that's great. Oh, I know somebody who can tell you about XYZ. And so, yeah, your family and your normal world will kind of be the naysayers, but you come inside the Cortex District and anything becomes possible, right?
Come get the love.
That's right. Come on down.
I think that's our new tagline. Come get the
Get
love.
the love. I think what's interesting too, in a corporate setting, a lot of people, they think, I can't be innovative in those settings. And what Christy and I always talk about is that you need to think entrepreneurially no matter where you're sitting. So if you are in a corporate setting, Jane, and I know Maurice, you guys can speak to this, is if there are opportunities to get engaged on teams that are looking at doing something, either a new business unit, new product, those are ways I think that, you can test the mettle within a large company to say, get your teeth wet in that respect. And then being able to take those skills, which a lot of people think I don't have any skills I can offer. There are lots of skills that our entrepreneurs need. Many of our founders are the technical experts, but they still need the requisite functional roles in those organizations. Can you guys speak to that?
And that's the issue dealing with minority entrepreneurs that I always run into, because it's a common thought that if you're not an engineer, a scientist, and somehow you're restricted from playing in the innovation space as an entrepreneur. And, as it relates to entrepreneurship in terms of being in corporate, my father told me when I was growing up, he said that you have one employer your entire life, and that's you, no matter where you work. And he was a government employee. So he raised me on the thought that you are always in a position you have to value your contribution to the organization. And if you're not providing value, then you're in jeopardy. Right. So you have to be in a constant search for that value.
And this was at time when your dad was working, where people worked one job all their life and they had sustainability in these jobs. Exactly. Now nobody has loyalty, and the companies certainly don't have loyalty to you. So if you're not proving your value, like you said,
that's true.
Yeah.
So as it relates to entrepreneurship, particularly in innovation space for underrepresented minorities, oftentimes it's about accessing innovation. And where do you do that? Do you do it through a federal system, in terms of federal laboratories like NASA, Department of Energy, DOD? Do you do it because your association with, say, researchers and the university system, but less so in terms of being required to be the actual inventor? If you look at these great companies that we have, very few of the principles that you read about are the actual inventor of the technology. They are managers. They are executives that saw an opportunity. We can go from Bill Gates to Jobs on down the line. So how do we connect these groups of women and minority entrepreneurs to innovation and build a set of know-hows and skills and management and leadership qualities around that to bring those technologies to market? And I think that is why that passion, that inspiration is so important, because those are things I can't give you.
Right.
I can give you how to read a balance sheet. We could do a bunch of other different things. But if you don't have that in the gut type of
that fire.
in your belly to do this, It's difficult.
You can't manufacture that. Absolutely not. We're going to take just a quick break and then come back and continue that conversation a little bit more.
Maybe you're doing all you know to do to be alive and well. Everything might look great on the outside, but you might be carrying a whole lot deep on the inside.
Something happens every day. It's things that catch you off guard, things that might make you just come out the blue, and it might make you a little bit stressful. And then therefore that trigger there leads to another trigger, what makes you want to compensate for that feeling.
No matter what things look like right now, keep holding on.
You just have to appreciate what you have and what's going on right now.
Get tips to Take 5. Go to AliveAndWellSTL.com.
Entrepreneurship, I think, is a means of achieving your dream. And if you have a passion and you have a dream, I would encourage everyone to dream big and then pursue that dream with a passion.
So Jane and Maurice, you touched on that fire in the belly. And I think we've got some folks a little fired up, but they're also not ready to leave their day jobs. And you guys spend a lot of time working with entrepreneurs. We often say young, but what we really mean is new. Folks who are at the first time exploring this. And in some cases, as Maurice said, they are the technical founder, but they need non-technical team members, non-technical co-founders. They certainly can't do it on their own, as we know. Could you talk a little bit about what you see as some of those greatest needs? So if I'm out there and I figure, I know some stuff, I might be able to add value to the work that's being done by those entrepreneurs, but I'm not quite sure. How do we get folks over that hump? And how do we do that by letting them know what our entrepreneurs need?
Yeah, well, opportunities are few and fleeting, right? So if you just sit back and just wait for something to happen, it ain't going to happen, right? You really have to start, taking that leap of faith, getting over that edge to pull, just do that. So coming into the Cortex districts, there's lots of opportunities. I can't even describe to you the things that are all here, but the first one that I love to go to today, as because it's right across the street from DuPont, but I probably would come even if I weren't sitting here, is a venture cafe. The fact that there are so many other entrepreneurs that are there and you make great network connections. It's just you guys should check it out. It's just a very easy way to kind of get used to the environment of Cortex without necessarily completely plunging in. And the other thing I want to say to that is you shouldn't give up your day job. If you've got an idea, great, explore it, come talk to some people. There's lots of, again, folks here that have been there, done that can guide you along the way. But you don't necessarily have to give up your day job right from the get-go. It's a step-by-step process, right?
And you shouldn't give up your day job, And I think you speak so highly of Venture Cafe. I agree with you. You can meet so many different people from so many different walks of life, from corporate to startup to students, education to, the arts. And I think it's a great opportunity to test the mettle of your idea.
And even if it's not your idea, like we were talking about, if you just think you have the opportunity to add value to the idea person, I personally describe myself as an operational entrepreneur. I'm not coming in with a big idea, but I know how to take a big idea and turn it step by step into a reality. Right? So there's probably more me's out there. And I think Venture Cafe and places like 1 Million Cups give you a chance to peer into what those idea folks are thinking and maybe even see yourself as part of that team.
Right. From my perspective, it's really understanding, and I use sports analogies all the time, understanding your best pitch. Because if you understand your best pitch, I can guide you. I can set up the batter. We could do other things, but make sure that you always throw your best pitch. And, because if you're not throwing your best pitch and you're trying to be something that you're not, you're trying to work outside of your skill set, outside of your comfort zone, it makes it very difficult for others to work with you. Because you want to come to any relationships or partnerships or alliances bringing your strongest attribute to the table. Because when someone starts to notice that, you're not strong in these areas, you're kind of setting out to be strong in, then it kind of takes a lot of wind and air out of the relationship and the possibilities. So come to the situation knowing your best pitch, understanding your capacity, your capabilities, just like what you mentioned. If you're an organizer, a manager, if you're an inspirer, if you are a technical person, know that this is what I bring to the table, and I need these other skills to kind of augment what I bring to the situation.
And I also think that Christy has a great program for folks. If you want to bring your skills, and we need mentors, especially women mentors and those minority mentors that have great skills in the Square One program.
Absolutely. And we are increasingly able to recruit more women and underrepresented minority entrepreneurs into the program. And frankly, they need to see themselves at the front of the room as well, whether that's as a subject matter expert on IP and company formation, or if it's as an entrepreneur who's sharing their story. That's really important.
But the challenge is oftentimes for women and minorities, because we are in an innovation space, you're not going to see someone that looks like you. And so the mentorship of the past, it may not, in terms of having folks that look like you, that may come from your similar surroundings, that may not be available. So that creates a challenge as it relates to mentorship, as it has been in the past in perhaps different areas. So we have to teach new entrepreneurs, particularly in the innovation space, who happen to be underrepresented minorities or women, that you can be a trailblazer. You don't have to necessarily see the shining mansion on the hill. You can create your own vision and be driven by your own vision. There's a story that was often told to me through my journey, and it's about a young lady who swam the English Channel, and she was swimming and she swam and she got bitten by jellyfish, and it was foggy and she was almost there, and she just said, just pull me out the water. And when they pulled her off, when the fog lifted, she was less than 100 yards away from the shore. And she said to the people around her, if I only could have seen the shore. But in this business, you never see the shore.
Never. Never.
So you have to keep swimming.
Right.
And so there are things that you have to swim by sight, not by visual sight, by insight, foresight, and hindsight. And those are the things that we have to create and instill in new entrepreneurs, that there's a new gestalt, a new way of thinking about mentorship that we have to bring to the table in order to ensure their success.
Yeah, just to kind of build on that, I totally concur with your comment about you don't need to be an expert in everything in order to be an entrepreneur. You bring a certain skill set, a certain expertise to the table, and the rest can come. Yeah. When I first started in my business, I knew nothing about finance. It was an area that I was very uncomfortable with. But again, with the mentoring and with the training and, kind of like diving in, you've got to be able to understand the financials of your company and your cash flow and your balance sheets. At the beginning, that was daunting to me. It isn't anymore, which again is another skill set that now I can bring to the table anytime, right?
To mentor,
or even to bring into DuPont and I have this enterprise thinking. I'm not just a marketeer. I'm not just a business developer. I have a lot more things to bring to the table.
And I think mentors make it safe for a lot of folks, to ask questions, because if you don't know a particular, if finance is not your strong suit, having someone to go to say, what, can you walk me through what are the highlights that I need to understand with the financial projections or whatever.
And that's why I think the Square One Ignite mentorship is great, because in the couple times that I've mentored there now, you see a lot of people that have a certain expertise that they bring, but then they're completely lacking something else, right? And it's totally fine. Like this pitch you were talking about, Maurice, I was just thinking is like a lot of people don't like to do public speaking. They have a great idea, but they're so afraid of that pitch, right? Again, there's so many different ways that we can get somebody comfortable with being able to know your own strengths, like you were saying, Maurice, and just focus in on that, and we can make a really great pitch for you. But you don't have to walk in knowing what to pitch or how to pitch, or I'm not comfortable doing public speaking. All those skill sets are things that the mentorships programs that around the Cortex area can assist with.
And I think that's where your mentors can help, even with building your team, helping you understand what are the skills that you need to bring to bear for your technology or your product or service to be developed, because it's not just one person. You might come with the idea.
No, it takes a village.
It takes a village.
It does take a village.
Yes.
And oftentimes, the entrepreneur sees this process as an adversarial process, because the questions are
are adversarial.
Exactly. And
in the best possible way.
Right.
Intimidating.
Yes.
So it's important to have someone that kind of
frames the
process and gives you an opportunity to look at it for what it is and not to personalize it.
Right.
And because the personalization of it creates this fear that, they're attacking me. No, they're just evaluating your concept.
Right.
And all the concepts at the stage of the pitch, I like to say, is hocus pocus to begin with anyway.
They're educated guesses with a little hocus pocus.
Gotta have that passion. Really.
So there's some things that we know that the person on the other side, they like to hear and that you have to deliver on. And there's a certain perspective that you need to portray and believe in. But again, those folks on the other side, they have their perspective and they are totally trying to figure it out from day to day, year to year, month to month. Because in the world of innovation, if you stay the same, you're not staying the same because things change.
Yeah,
so things will pass you by. And you made the comment a few times, Jane, that, you can't wait for the opportunity to come to you. You've got to go out there and seize that moment. So as we wrap it up here, and it's hard to believe our time together is already coming to an end.
I know.
But
it's been such a great discussion.
It has.
It's
and
great.
what I've found really inspiring from Maurice, really framing it of our mentors don't need to look like us, but also our mentees don't need to look like us either. So we can see the potential in others who don't necessarily look like us. And we can also learn a lot from people who don't. But if we're willing to be coached, if we're willing to be pushed and challenged on our dream, and we have the fire and that inspiration that both Jane and Maurice spoke about, then we pretty much have a good recipe for moving out and moving beyond.
Think so.
And so I hope you'll all leave us today with that fire in your belly and with that belief that you can push on and push forward, whether that is as the entrepreneur or as we've been talking about as perhaps that mentor, subject matter expert, or potential team member as part of a new venture. Thank you so much for being part of the conversation.
Yes.
Thank you.
Helping us to think entrepreneurially. And we hope that you'll join Entrepreneurially Thinking on your favorite digital streaming platforms. And we look forward to having you back.
Don't quit your day job.
Changing the way you view new ventures, igniting your thinking about entrepreneurship. It's Entrepreneurially Thinking. Get connected and discover more. Visit our website for show notes, resources, information about our guests, upcoming events, and of course, all your favorite episodes. If you have any questions, be sure to leave them for us in the comment sections, and be sure to leave us a 5-star rating on iTunes. The best way to show love is to share. Let everybody know that you're thinking entrepreneurially. So visit our website, entrepreneuriallythinking.com. #eThinkSTL. Entrepreneurially Thinking is another positive production of Rare Gem Productions. Thanks for listening.